Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky, your host. Really good show for you today, really important show for you today. I've got Clay Martin. He is the founder of a new company called Isla Talent, here to talk about a unique wrinkle on recruiting for your blue-collar manufacturing and distribution kinds of jobs. Welcome, Clay.
How's it going? Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, sir. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking my LinkedIn request. I sent a lot of those out, so if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be here. So thanks for taking that. I know you do a lot of work on LinkedIn as well, so it's nice that you
I do. It's a godsend when it comes to, connecting with people who are part of this big industry thing that I'm into. And your timing was impeccable. Obviously, the workforce thing is a big deal right now, and you're bringing some unique solutions. So before we jump into the details of your solutions, why don't you just give us your background and how you got doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. So thanks, Jim. My name's Clay Martin. I'm the founder of Isla Talent, recruiting from Puerto Rico. I live in Denver, Colorado. Love Denver. Love the outdoors. I've always kind of been involved with Spanish. That's kind of how I got to where I am now. Started speaking Spanish in my teens and in high school. And studied abroad, and then I did about 4 years in the Peace Corps, and that really kicked things off for me. I lived and worked with indigenous groups in Latin America. I could talk about that for hours, but maybe another time. But that really kind of molded, my character and just my love for Spanish and working with different people. And then after the Peace Corps, I started working on dairy farms in Latin America, or dairy farms in upstate New York. Recruiting migrant workers primarily from Mexico and also Puerto Rico. And that's kind of how I got into this whole workforce thing, recruiting people from Puerto Rico. Eventually tried the whole corporate thing. That lasted about 6 months. Corporate recruiting wasn't for me. Yep. I remember I showed up to my office one day, Jim. I remember it was my first day and I'd never worked in an office before. I was probably 25, 26. And I show up with a huge palm tree, this tall. And the office manager was like, yeah, you can't have the palm tree in here. I'm like, what?
Yep.
So I eventually started my own business in 2016, recruiting job seekers from Puerto Rico, since I do not need a visa. Primarily for the blue collar industry, manufacturing and landscaping, construction. Did that for about 7 years, sold the business. And a year later, here I am kind of doing what I feel like my calling is, just recruiting people from Puerto Rico and working with manufacturers.
Cool. Now I got to go right back to the start. Did I mispronounce the company name right from the get-go? I did, right after. He literally told me 5 seconds before I hit record. Oh, what a great start.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Isla Talent. There we go.
My dad still can't pronounce it right, so.
I'm an English speaker.
Yeah. Well, I chose the name because I wanted something that was in Spanish and in English, so I can cater to my clients, which are companies, and the job seekers, which are from Puerto Rico.
Yep.
So that's kind of why I had that mix.
Well, and I'm a clear indicator that you're just going to have to get used to hearing it mispronounced, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. So tell us a little more about how you got into that and
yeah.
What you see the benefits of.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my background was kind of I had done the whole Peace Corps thing, always loved Spanish, but I'd worked a lot in landscaping in the summers, and my brother owns a landscape company, and I knew a lot about, that's kind of how I started just kind of getting this labor shortage thing on my head and visa programs, the H-2B visa program. And I knew that something had to be done. I did a lot of research. This is back in 2016, 17, just researching blue collar labor shortages. And I knew something unique had to be done. and I started this business. And honestly, Jim, I went from like, living in my parents' basement and like starting this business. It took off. And then I kind of filled my dream of moving to Denver, Colorado. Do not live with my parents anymore. But
Congratulations.
yeah, I mean, it took off so fast because there are no visas needed. There is no red tape. It took a long time for me to build those relationships in Puerto Rico to get people to trust me. And I honestly just bought a one-way ticket and I went down to Puerto Rico. I got myself an Airbnb in the middle of the island and then kind of like centrally located, strategically located. And I just started doing job fairs and building my reputation. And it's taken a lot of kind of like time to build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think that they can just go down there and like, oh, we have someone that speaks Spanish, we'll just go down there. But there's so much more to it. Just building the trust, the relationships, understanding what people are looking for, and just certain things like that. Can't give away all my trade secrets, but
I wouldn't ask you to.
Yeah. So,
but that's a great point.
Yeah.
You're here for a reason and
Yeah.
successful for a reason.
Yep. Yeah. Just a lot of like, I don't like to call them tricks, but just like a lot of little things that I know, like little things that make a big difference to make this work. But I've worked with lots of manufacturers and other blue collar jobs, companies. The manufacturing tends to be the most desired job because it's, when you have a lot of the blue collar outdoor jobs, weather gets in the way, and people from Puerto Rico, they want at least 40 hours a week. And so that's why the manufacturing's been super successful, because they have like consistent hours typically.
Mm-hmm.
And manufacturing is there's a decent amount of manufacturing and pharmaceutical work done in Puerto Rico. So that's why a lot of people in Puerto Rico have experience and they want to do that. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah. Which is absolutely a critical thing nowadays, is people can't find folks with that kind of experience who want to do it.
Exactly. And then, a lot of welders, mechanics, a lot of the trades that, those skills that are needed in manufacturing, and kind of bouncing around here. But, the economy in Puerto Rico has gotten better, but it's suffered a lot. Like just Hurricane Maria that happened, I believe, in 2017, that hurt the island a lot. And just like tourism kind of got affected. So a lot of people want to move to the States to work temporarily or permanently. And, I'm all about Puerto Rico. I'm all about the people making money here, sending it back or going back if they can to start their own business. And those are the success stories that I like. I don't want people to think that I'm just trying to take the labor force from Puerto Rico. I mean, I hope the island can flourish, but it takes money to do that. And that's why a lot of people will come here, work, and maybe go back or send money back and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, a couple of points. Number one is, I think, despite kind of the popular media notion, most Americans welcome people who want to come here and succeed. They just want people who are doing it within the parameters of the law. And that's the beauty of what you bring to the table, is you have people who aren't truly the immigrants that we typically think of, or territory, and therefore have an easier way to that path. The other thing, absolutely, is we don't want to take away from Puerto Rico, but I think your last point is exactly right, is people who are wanting to come here and do those needed jobs are shipping money back to Puerto Rico. So there is that outflow of talent, but the inflow of dollars, which are also important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I hope that it helps the income disparity. I mean, the jobs here, a manufacturing job here that pays $18 to $22 an hour in Puerto Rico typically would pay like $8.50 to $9.50 an hour. Maybe a little more, but that's, almost double, so, a lot. That's why when I have these jobs and I reach out to my talent pool, people get really excited. And it's also, the biggest thing is there's no red tape. So my famous line is, no red tape, no visas needed. But typically I recruit 10 to 20 people within about 2 to 4 weeks. So
Yep.
clients that come to me and they're like, hey, my facility, if we don't get 10 more employees in the next month, we're going to go under, or we can't fill our needs. I mean, I've had clients request 100 workers. I've recruited 100 workers for one manufacturing company before, because as you know, more than anyone, like a lot of these facilities, they just can't keep up with the orders, and so then they're losing revenue. And so when they come to me and say that, and I tell them, hey, I can have you have 20 employees working for you in about a month's time, they get pretty excited.
Yeah, and to that point, that's a problem that unfortunately a lot of people missed that it was coming, and I still fail to understand why we would miss it when we know we have the baby boomers who are all retiring in droves, which was the biggest generation in recent generations. And at the same time, they're the last ones for whom manufacturing jobs, skilled trades were held out as a positive career.
Yeah.
So to be surprised by that when we knew the dynamics is a little surprising.
Yeah.
But that's the reality, and it's not going away anytime soon. So you're catering to a very, in some areas, desperate and immediate need.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it is wild, and I mean, Puerto Rico is a small island, so I don't.
Yeah.
This is just another option of recruiting.
Right.
This isn't going to fix the whole labor shortage in America with manufacturing, but this is a great alternative. And I think, one of the main, reasons that we're talking and what you do is to make people aware that there are other options out there and that they need to take them seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way we're going to solve both the short-term challenge and the long-term dilemma is by having multiple levers to pull. And like you said, you're one of them right now, and could be for some time. Now, you mentioned, no red tape, no visas. Absolutely true, given it's Puerto Rico, but it's still a long haul away from most places in the U.S. How do you deal with? I mean, there's the transportation, housing, and all that.
Yep. Good question.
Difficult.
Yep. Great question. So typically, the flights from Puerto Rico to anywhere on the East Coast aren't that bad. They're not that expensive. A couple $100s. Typically, we require our clients, which are the companies, to pay for the flights from Puerto Rico, and then provide subsidized housing at a reasonable cost, furnished housing. So the people from Puerto Rico come, and I kind of help make sure that they're going to get paid fairly, treated fairly, but more importantly, they have a safe, adequate place to live. And all of that is set up in advance. I make sure to see pictures and videos, share that with the workers so they know what they're getting into, because that's kind of one of the unfortunate things. I don't want to get in trouble here talking about other companies, but like I've heard a lot of stories about people just companies trying to bring people over from Puerto Rico, and it's, I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of people get taken advantage of. They show up, there's no furniture, there's, they said there would be furniture, then there's not, and these houses are discussed. So not that happens all the time, but that's not what I don't want to be associated with that. And that's why I make sure to see these pictures and videos, and I'm trying to get everyone knows the expectations.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, a big line that I give a lot in my sales pitch is I want to avoid misunderstandings. And that's why I try to get as much information as possible, because people are literally relocating from Puerto Rico to the mainland. And that is a big deal. So
huge. Yep. Well, and I love that you're tackling that head on. You're really setting yourself that kind of distinguishing factor that can set you apart from your competition. And you're helping both sides answer questions they may not even think of.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah. And it's also, were you going to ask a question?
No, go ahead.
And making sure that people are taken care of. I mean, I think that's kind of the biggest benefit of having someone like myself or a recruiter to be the middleman or woman to really bridge that gap and make sure that both parties are taken care of, because sometimes, the client might do something wrong, or sometimes the employee might do something wrong, and just kind of making sure that, I'm not middleman to make sure that everything goes well as good as possible. And I think that's why the job seekers in Puerto Rico, the recruits, they come back to me because they trust me. And it's like, I got a guy a couple of days ago, I every once in a while get like a random text or WhatsApp message from someone that I recruited, and this guy's like, oh, everyone calls me by my last name, Martin, in Spanish. So he said, Martin, like, you recruited me for this one job 7 years ago. I'm still here. I brought my family here. I got a car. You know, my kid's learning English. Like, I've learned English, and my wife has a good job. Thank you so much. And like, that's, you know, like, those are just the stories that make me want to keep doing this. You know, people that write me on Christmas and say, you know, Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, you know, like, just, it's really cool. It's really cool. And it's taken, you know, to get there, it's taken a lot. You know, it's like, I remember when I was living in Cincinnati, I'd go visit my parents, and I mean, I'm on my phone all, you know, when we were like, when I first started and things took off, I mean, we were recruiting thousands of people a year. So like, literally on my phone all the time, you know, probably, you know, it's like, why was I single for so long? Probably because I was always on my phone. You know, I'd be on a date, I'd be on a dinner date somewhere, and I'd be like, I got to go to the bathroom. And I'm like sitting there, like texting Puerto Ricans for 20 minutes, you know? But that customer service is super important in an industry like this, you know, because things happen at all hours of the day. People are traveling at night. So yeah, that's why I'm here. I mean, I just love those success stories. I love, you know, these people from Puerto Rico, you know, they call me hermano, brother. Hey, you know, thanks. You've done so much for me. And that just, it feels great.
Well, and it's good business, right? I mean, you have the horror stories where they're, you know, we don't like it, but the reality is there are bad actors really on both sides. But most people you're dealing with want to do well, whether it's the companies wanting to do well for the people they're bringing over, or the people you're bringing over wanting to do well for the companies, and you help iron out the challenges. That can only help you in the future, that you make it so much easier for your clients on both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's just being available. And that's just good business in general, right? I mean, that's not just recruiting from Puerto Rico. That's how any person that's a manager or a leader in a business, whether it's manufacturing or nursing or landscaping, construction, finance, you know, just being available for your employees goes such a long way.
Sure.
Asking questions, like, really with intention, like really caring. You know, I think that's like one of the biggest things I've learned, is to like actually care. And it's easy for a lot of companies to say that. I think it's easy for people to say that, but it's not, you know, you got to put it to practice. And a lot of people, you know, I hear a lot of companies say, well, we have a great company culture. And it's like, okay, well, elaborate. Like, what does that mean? Like, what is your company culture? What are you really doing? So that's like one of the key questions I ask companies before I work with them.
Excellent. So yeah, you're just getting started with your new round here. What are your plans for the short term and then the long term?
Yes. Yeah. So round 2, Isla Talent recruiting from Puerto Rico started about last week. Like I said, I have a lot of, you know, I have a pretty big reputation in this industry. So I got a lot of people that want to work with me on both sides, the client side and the job seeker side. So just reaching out to companies, getting my name out there again, have a large group of people in Puerto Rico always ready to work, vetted and ready to go. You know, because there are no visas and there is no red tape, people can leave immediately. But I don't like to do that. I like to, you know, take the time to make sure things are ready. But yeah, I mean, this time around, definitely focusing on manufacturing and the blue collar jobs, but also throwing in nursing. You know, there's a huge nursing shortage in on the mainland here in the States. And so, and there's a lot of nurses in Puerto Rico looking for work. So kind of doing the same thing I've always done, but focusing on healthcare and nursing. That's kind of the biggest change I'm going to be doing this time around, and changing up some of my model. You know, I really want to focus on retention as much as possible and kind of helping and manage these situations a little bit more, trying to, I'm always available, but kind of telling clients that's a non-negotiable. I need to be involved in some of the day-to-day stuff, just because I understand the culture, the language, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm curious about one thing. I've moved a lot myself, all around the Eastern U.S., but as you know, half of our country's really big.
Yeah.
And moving is always wrenching. How do you deal? I have to imagine you've run into it where someone comes over here and is just not happy and wants to go home. How do you deal with that challenge?
It happens, if that happens, the worker hopefully will give 2 weeks notice to the employer, and they typically have to find their way back to Puerto Rico or wherever they want to go. Trying to choose my words wisely here, but I want to help, as someone I'm basically creating a program. I mean, it's not just, I'm a for-profit business, but I'm creating a program, and I try to help out people in Puerto Rico as much as possible, but we can't give everything, A lot of times we get the flights. Sometimes the clients will deduct the flights from their paycheck. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll say, if you finish the season satisfactory, if this was a seasonal job, once you finish, they'll pay for their flights home. It just kind of depends on the company. But if something doesn't work out, typically my clients are pretty empathetic and understand, and try to help facilitate for someone to get home. Maybe they'll help them get their flight, but won't pay for it, but they'll help look it up and take them to the airport, of course, and things like that.
Got it. Yep.
But, when companies are, providing the housing, it's like, that's kind of like, it's not like you have to be out immediately. It's, hey, got a couple days, but the housing is for employees only.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, you mentioned adding nursing and healthcare. Are there other employment opportunities that you see in the future that you might further expand into?
Mostly just the blue collar and trades. We also do management recruiting, for manufacturing and landscape companies. We'll do like higher level, and not recruiting people from Puerto Rico, typically people on the mainland. So if like a landscape company needs an account manager, or a manufacturing company needs an operations manager, stuff like that. So trying to expand more into the kind of traditional recruiting. But my bread and butter is the blue collar jobs. So it's exciting, starting, you're an entrepreneur yourself. It's not easy, but it's exciting, and every day is different, and it's definitely a challenge. I mean, I was listening to something this morning about from Jeff Bezos, and he was talking about, the mentality of an entrepreneur is like, one thing you have to really keep in mind is don't estimate risks, so it's easy for people to be paranoid and think all about the risk, but typically the risk isn't as big as the reward. I don't know if I hope I'm getting that all right. That's kind of what I took away from it this morning. But and I thought about that a lot, and the first time that I started my business, I mean, I was, 28. I just been living in my parents' basement, or maybe, early 30s, just living in my parents' basement. And I had a little bit of money saved, not much. And I just said, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to try this business. I'm confident. And I knew there were major risks, but I also knew that the reward could be huge. And I was confident. I was confident in what I wanted to do. I was confident there was a need, and I was confident in my abilities. And I really tried to, and this is just advice for anyone. I don't want to sit here and talk about, my why I feel like I was successful, but it's good advice. It's a lot of people were trying to tell me what to do in the beginning. I love asking for advice. I love asking people for advice. But in the beginning, people were like, you need to do this and you need to do that. And I slowed down, and I was like, I know this industry more than anyone. And I have the vision of the way this is going to go. And it went that way, and it was pretty successful. So, that's kind of my advice to pretty much any entrepreneur, is just try not to be afraid of the risks, and think about the rewards.
Yep. Yeah, and you make a great point. Is once you've dived into a subject in good detail, you are pretty much an expert.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people haven't done that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And one thing my father has always told me, and his father told him, was once you're good at something, try to stick to it. And don't deviate too much. I mean, it's okay to maybe have your main thing and a few things other there, but don't be all over the place, So my father and some of my friends also always kind of remind me of that, and I think that's a good thing to kind of remember. Just focus on what you're good on. you build a network, you build knowledge, and your network and your knowledge is your biggest asset. And I think that's one thing. Another thing I've really learned the second time around of kind of starting this new business is just reaching out to my network that I've built. And that takes a lot of confidence. And reaching out to a network is also, it could be a little nerve-wracking. I mean, reaching out, to someone like yourself, you write for Forbes. Like, I saw that and I'm like, this guy seems pretty nice and he seems like a good guy. And I'm sure he talks to some of the biggest CEOs in the industry, but I'm going to reach out to him anyways. And, and we've kept in touch for 6 months or whatever it is. And I think that's like, it's just good to know that there's people out there that want to help, want to collaborate, and you never know what an Instagram invite could turn into, or just networking, having coffee with someone. I think that's like the biggest thing. I mean, since I've got kind of starting this new business, I've reached out to other people that I've known for years, and people want to help, people want to help and support you.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually rereading The 4-Hour Workweek right now.
Oh yeah. Nice. Tim Ferriss.
Yeah. And one of his points is that you're insecure. Well, guess what? So is everybody else. So if you're willing to tackle that and even in part overcome it, you're going to be ahead of most people.
Yeah.
And so, your point's excellent. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask whoever for help. Maybe you get slapped down, but if that's the worst that could happen, who cares? Look at the best that could happen. You get super help with someone.
Absolutely. And I think that's a trait that you can learn, not just in business, but in day to day, by interacting with whoever you encounter in your day. It could be a clerk at the grocery store. It could be a homeless person. It could be the CEO of a large company. It could be someone checking you in at your gym, whatever. It just someone walking their dog. Just being comfortable to talk with people is significantly going to help you with your business networking as well.
Yeah, I agree. Interestingly enough, you may not know this. I'm actually naturally an introvert.
Okay.
Seriously. And the way I tackled it was I watched friends of mine who were doing the behaviors I wanted to be able to do and was afraid to do. Mm-hmm. And then I'd get into situations and I'd think, okay, what would Scott do? What would Bill do? Sure. And just act like them.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. I've kind of been, honestly, in the past 2 to 3 months since I kind of stepped away from my previous employer and I've decided to start my own business. I've really been on this high of like just networking and talking with different people and getting different ideas and being confident about asking people to help or meet. How can I help them? How can they help me? Not even in like a financial way, and I was thinking about kind of that, how I got that confidence. And a lot of it, kind of like I was saying before, just comes from interacting with all different types of people. I mean, in my early 20s, right out of college, I was living with like tribal people in Ecuador, having conversations with shamans with like body paint on their face and, wild boar tooth necklaces. And like, that was scary at the time. That was like wild. And then like now that exact shaman is like one of my best friends and I still go back and visit him every 2 to 3 years. So,
and there are so very few CEOs who wear the wild boar necklace.
Exactly. Yeah. But
it's all relative.
Yeah. The reason I bring that up is because, but then it's like that gave me the confidence to talk with some of the CEOs of the largest landscape companies in the country or do recruiting for a Fortune 500 manufacturing company. It's like all these relationships just kind of help build on each other to give you that confidence.
For sure. Well, we are about out of time, so I want to throw it to you for your last thoughts.
Last thoughts. I mean, I kind of just said everything. I just think it's just being confident in yourself and building your network, being confident about as many people, being confident, about reaching out to anyone. And to do that, it takes confidence, but you need to build on it by just interacting with people day to day, whether it's in person, LinkedIn, and just not being afraid to start a conversation because you never know where it could go. I'm honored to be on your show, and this wouldn't be happening if I wouldn't have reached out to you and probably kept bugging you. And, but
that's right too.
Yeah. But like, And it's not all business, you and I will be texting about cycling, stuff like that.
Right.
You never know, maybe you'll come to Denver sometime for a cycling trip. So you never know where relationships can take you. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
I agree 100%, Clay. Thanks so much for joining us today, and best of luck with Isla Talent. I think
you got it.
Be a smash hit.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And of course, as always, thanks to you in the audience. You are why we're here. And, I think Clay brought some phenomenal stuff to solve a big problem, or at least help solve it. So, look up Isla Talent. I'll have a link in the show description. Holler at Clay if you can use his help. And we'll be here every Tuesday with another show. So, I can't promise everything's going to be as super helpful as what Clay brought us today, but it's all going to be at least a little helpful. So, signing off from Manufacturing Talks, this is Jim Vanoski. So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vanoski. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.